How the Enabler Supports Abuse Without Ever Raising Their Voice. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and this is the Family Roles series. This episode is part of the Enabler arc, and today we're going deep into how enablers support abuse without ever raising their voice. This is one of the most psychologically destabilizing and under-recognized behaviors inside narcissistic systems because it's so subtle, so common, and so easy to mistake for maturity. Enablers aren't the ones yelling, hitting, or dominating, but they are the ones smoothing over the aftermath, redirecting blame, denying harm, and pressuring victims to be quiet for the sake of peace. Their participation is quiet, but it is critical. Because without the enabler, the narcissist can't stay in control. Their illusion falls apart. So today, we're going to unpack this dynamic in full depth. We'll explore the psychological tactics enablers use to deny, dilute, and deflect accountability. We'll study the language they use, how they insert themselves without appearing controlling, and why their soft-spoken sabotage is often more confusing and more damaging than overt abuse. If you've ever tried to tell the truth and been met with warmth, guilt, redirection, or subtle invalidation, this video is for you. Because what you were facing wasn't compassion. It was control disguised as concern. To understand how enablers do what they do, we need to first understand their relationship to power. Enablers are often deeply invested in the stability of the narcissistic structure. They may be financially dependent, emotionally enmeshed, spiritually bonded, or psychologically frozen. Some believe they're protecting the family, some are protecting themselves, but regardless of motive, the outcome is the same. They become agents of denial, defenders of dysfunction, and silencers of truth. The first and most common method enablers use is what I call gaslighting by proxy. This means the enabler denies your experience not through direct argument, but through subtle suggestion. They weren't the one who hurt you, but they're the one who convinces you it wasn't that bad. They'll say things like, "That's not how I remember it," or "You always take things too personally," or "She probably didn't mean it that way." This kind of indirect gaslighting works by destabilizing your perception without ever sounding aggressive. It creates just enough doubt to make you question whether your pain is real. And when someone you trusted is the one introducing that doubt, the effect is profound. Gaslighting by proxy doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like confusion. You try to explain what happened, but they gently push back. You try to describe how it made you feel, but they suggest you're being dramatic. Over time, you begin editing yourself before you even speak. You stop sharing. You stop trusting your instincts. You begin second-guessing whether anything really happened at all. And this is the damage. Not just the event itself, but the slow erosion of your reality afterward. Enablers don't erase the abuse, they erase your ability to name it. The second tactic enablers use is strategic neutrality. This is one of their most well-defended roles. They insist they aren't taking sides. They don't want drama. They're just trying to keep the peace. But in a system where abuse is happening, neutrality is not neutral. It's protection of power. When someone refuses to intervene in a clear power imbalance, they are siding with the abuser by default. Strategic neutrality is a form of passive aggression because it places the burden of emotional restraint on the victim while allowing the narcissist to continue unhindered. Enablers who claim neutrality often do so to preserve their own image. They want to appear balanced, wise, and emotionally mature. But in reality, they're avoiding accountability. They don't want to have hard conversations. They don't want to confront the narcissist. They don't want to lose access to the benefits they receive from staying in the narcissist's good graces. So they retreat into what they frame as neutrality, but it's really avoidance dressed up as peacekeeping. What makes this more dangerous is that enablers use their neutrality to silence others. When you bring up harm, they respond not with care, but with caution. Let's not go there. Why dig all this up now? There are two sides to every story. These statements don't address the harm, they erase it. They reduce real abuse to mere conflict. And in doing so, they make it harder and harder for anyone to speak up without being painted as the problem. The third tactic enablers use is the language of minimization. They don't deny what happened, they just downplay it. They change the language to make the abuse sound less harmful, less deliberate, or less meaningful. Instead of calling it a lie, they say it was a misunderstanding. Instead of calling it manipulation, they say the person was just trying to help. Instead of calling it verbal assault, they say, it was just a bad day. The goal here isn't truth, it's tolerance. They want everyone to tolerate more harm by framing it as something less than what it actually is. Minimization is particularly powerful because it appeals to your desire to be fair. When someone says, maybe it wasn't as bad as you think, you start wondering if you're being too hard, if you're too emotional, if you're expecting too much. The enabler's phrasing leads you toward self-doubt, and because they deliver it calmly, gently, and with apparent empathy, you're less likely to recognize it for what it is. Narrative control. Minimization also comes with moral pressure. He's trying. She's doing her best. It's hard for them too. These statements prioritize the abuser's effort over your experience. They make you feel guilty for expecting better, for naming the truth, for needing something real. And that guilt is a weapon. Because once you accept their framing, you begin apologizing for your pain. The fourth tactic enablers rely on is emotional redirection. This is when they shift the focus away from the narcissist's behavior and onto your reaction to it. You try to talk about what happened, and the enabler replies, "But why are you so upset? Why are you holding on to this? Isn't that a little dramatic?" Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about what they did, it's about how you're handling it. Your feelings become the new problem. Your tone becomes the threat. Redirection works because it hijacks the emotional frame. You came in seeking validation, but you leave questioning your own emotional intelligence. You feel ashamed of having a normal reaction to abnormal behavior. You wonder if your anger is the real issue. You get stuck analyzing yourself instead of holding the abuser accountable. And that's exactly what the enabler wants to make your emotions more visible than the abuse itself. Redirection also creates learned self-censorship. You begin anticipating their disapproval. You stop expressing pain because you know it will be reframed as overreaction. You disconnect from your anger, your grief, your voice. You make yourself smaller to avoid the look of disappointment on their face when you speak with truth. And this internalized censorship becomes a form of bondage. The fifth and perhaps most devastating role of the enabler is that of the cleanup crew. This is the person who comes in after the narcissist has done damage, said something cruel, started a scene, created chaos, and instead of holding them accountable, the enabler manages the optics. They call people to smooth things over. They rewrite what happened for the sake of family appearances. They convince others to stay quiet, to forgive quickly, to put on a smile. They restore the narcissist's reputation, not because it's deserved, but because it's easier than dealing with the truth. The cleanup crew role is particularly common during major family events, weddings, holidays, funerals. When the narcissist behaves badly, the enabler jumps into crisis management mode. They'll say things like, "Let's not ruin the day. It's not worth the drama," or "We can deal with this later." But later never comes, because the real goal isn't resolution, it's concealment. The enabler isn't trying to heal the wound, they're trying to hide it. This cleanup behavior also conditions others to accept less. When the narcissist is protected after every outburst, everyone learns that the rules don't apply to them, that they'll never be held accountable, that no matter what they do, someone else will smooth it over, and that someone is almost always the enabler. They make sure that consequences never arrive, that stories are rewritten, that the narcissist is reabsorbed into the family system with minimal friction, and they do it all while smiling, appearing helpful, and claiming to just want everyone to get along. But make no mistake, this is not kindness. It is containment. It is strategic emotional interference. It ensures that no one heals, no one grows, and no one escapes. What makes this so confusing is that enablers are rarely hostile. They're not cruel. They don't scream. They often appear loving, generous, even protective. They check in on you. They offer comfort. They give you the illusion of support, but it is always conditional. Their care is only available as long as you don't disrupt the system. The moment you start telling the truth, asserting boundaries, or questioning the family dynamic, the enabler's warmth turns cold. They distance. They disapprove. They start calling you difficult, angry, or damaged. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something real. This duality is deeply destabilizing. On the surface, they're your ally. Underneath, they're preserving your silence. And that split is what makes them so hard to identify, especially if they're your parent, your sibling, or someone who raised you. You want to believe they're doing their best, that they didn't know, that they were just afraid. But knowing better doesn't always lead to doing better. And fear is not an excuse for participating in harm. If you've been entangled with an enabler, the healing process requires brutal clarity. You have to stop translating their behavior through the lens of intention and start measuring it by impact. Did they protect you or the system? Did they validate your experience or redirect you away from it? Did they show up when it counted or only when it was convenient? You also have to stop making their comfort your responsibility. You are not here to preserve their illusion. You are not here to shield them from the guilt of their inaction. You are not here to absorb the emotional consequences they refuse to face. Your loyalty belongs to the truth, not to the people who couldn't handle it. The most painful part of this process is realizing that the person who seemed to love you most may have actually caused the most confusion. Because enablers don't just deny the abuse. They deny your capacity to name it, to process it, to express it. They block the exit door while convincing you they're helping you stay safe. So here's what you need to know. Enablers support abuse not by attacking you, but by weakening your ability to defend yourself. They manipulate language, emotions, and moral pressure. They rewrite your story while pretending to listen to it. They shrink your voice while acting like they're hearing you. And they do it all without ever raising their voice. That is not peacekeeping. That is complicity. And you are allowed to see it for what it is. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start. The black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child. and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation and leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.